Welcome to Quick Tip Tuesday. Today we're going to go over arrow direction as it pertains to signage. Now this concept works for signacades or A-frames where there's separate signs on each side, or a single signage where it's printed double-sided. So the first concept we're going to go over is single-sided signs. So on my signacade, I have the signs pointing to the right on both sides. So to set up your artwork files to have it printed to make sure that they are printed in the right direction, you'll want the arrows to be set up in separate directions. So I have one printed right, and then I have my back graphic printed with the arrow going to the left. And the reason that is because when you insert one of the graphics on the front, it's pointed in the right direction, and then when you insert it on the back, you're going to have to flip the graphic around and slide it in. So that flip makes the arrow point in the right direction. So as you can see, it's correct on the front and on the back. But what if I had my arrows pointed in the same direction? So as you can see, I've decided to print both my graphics with the arrows printed in the same direction. But watch what happens when I insert it onto the display. So I insert it onto the back of the display. As you can see, the arrows are pointed in opposite directions. I mean, you may want a sign with the arrows going in opposite directions, but in most cases you'll want the arrows pointed in the same direction. So to ensure that, you will need to set up your artwork files with the arrows pointing in separate directions. So this is single-sided signage. So let's dive in and do double-sided signage. Now I've installed double-sided signage into my A-frame. So the double-sided concept is just a little bit harder than the single-sided concept since you have graphics printed on both sides of your sign. So on my display, I do have the arrows pointing to the right, and the way I set my artwork files up is very similar to how I set up my single-sided artwork. Both are going in the opposite direction. So when it comes to a single double-sided sign, you want to make sure when setting up your artwork files that you have two separate arrow directions if you want the arrow pointing in the same direction on your sign. So I have the arrow pointing to the left and the arrow pointing to the right, so that when it's inserted into my sign, the arrow is facing the same direction on the front and the back. And the reason being is when it is printed, the first side is printed, and then to do the second side, they flip it over and print the second side, this allowing the arrow to be in the same direction on either side. So, as you can see, I have the arrows pointed in opposite directions. So on my sign, they'll be pointed in the same direction. It is just that easy to set up your arrows to point in the same direction on directional signage, whether that be single or double-sided. I'll see you next time for another Quick Tip Tuesday.